When the Wind Blows. That was a title I hadn't heard in a long time. It was just obviously a British animated film based on a graphic novel by Raymond Briggs. You know, the guy who did The Snowman. It centered around an elderly couple, then one day, word came out that war would break out in 3 days. The graphic novel was written around the height of the Cold War. The threat of nuclear war was as high as it is now. I've always had morbid affection for dark animated films. Watership Down, The Plague Dogs, Felidae, you name it. When the Wind Blows fit snugly into that bubble. Having watched it religiously on YouTube, the film was ultimately removed, most likely because of its violation of the website's terms of service with its objectionable content. My thirst for the darkness of the animated feature was unquenchable, and I hadn't watched it since. That would all change one day. While I was browsing the internet, I came upon an online forum dedicated to dark, more obscure cartoons. It must have been my lucky day, because one of the users happened to discuss When the Wind Blows. It was boring at first, with just him elaborating on how he was immensely disturbed by the film when he saw it at 7. Then, the discussion took a swerve. After he explained what he considered the most horrid aspect of the film, he added an interesting tidbit. Apparently, it was an interview with Briggs himself. In the interview, Briggs explained that what contributed to his penning the graphic novel was the reality of a nuclear war, and how virtually impossible it was for anyone to survive a nuclear holocaust. As such, there was a secret ending embedded in the home releases of the movie. To further his point, the user left a link to download the movie. Curiosity overwhelmed my reasoning. For all intents and purposes, he may as well might have fabricated the whole thing. But if it was in fact real, it would prove a good nugget of my knowledge. So I clicked the link. As it loaded, I was growing concerned that I was hoodwinked, and that some sort of virus would crash it. I glanced back at my computer screen, seeing that it was finished. The film surprisingly started off without a single lag nor freeze. David Bowie performed the title song per usual, followed by the real-life footage in Jim returning home from reading the newspapers in town. He lived with his wife in his country home in Sussex. He conversed with his wife again without issue. I felt a building dread. This was likely the third time I've seen the film, so I already knew how everything would play out. Its saccharine mask would crumble away, exposing its sinister underbelly. I hadn't the faintest idea as to why this was the case. If I could put money on it, I'd have to guess Jim's tone of voice. He was voiced by John Mills, and yet rather than his jovial, more informed self, he had a forlorn expression on his face. Hilda immediately took notice. When she asked her husband what the matter was, he informed her about the likelihood of war being inevitable. After she went through the tirade of war being wicked, the radio shuddered to life, announcing that war could be expected in 3 days. The film segs to Jim preparing the house for the nuclear missile, such as by painting the windows white or making a makeshift bomb shelter, all according to the Protect and Survive pamphlet the government handed out. He called his son Ron, only to become disheartened with his son's seeming ignorance. Ron's laughter could be heard over the phone, a mixture of humor and melancholy. He quoted famous songs, much to his father's chagrin. To me, it was clear that Ron was aware than he was letting on. He was losing what little sanity he had left by partying his troubles away. The film progressed with the couple mentioning previous wars and D-Day. Hilda was making a cake, while her husband further desecrated the house in accordance with the pamphlet. The radio sounded again, the announcer explaining that an ICBM would arrive in 3 minutes. Jim became more hectic and shoved Hilda underneath the door after calling her a bitch. The screen turned to symbolize the missile dropping. A deafening siren blared through my headphones, nearly sending me sprawling on the ground. Violent images of civilians' bodies littered the scenery. Fire rained down from the sky and engulfed the bystanders. A school bus full of children was hit by a wave of the flames, each child's body bloated up from the blast and ruptured like water balloons. Their skin melted off gorily. Imagine placing a stick of butter being placed in a microwave. Other people were glued to the streets due to their legs fusing with the concrete. Faces burned off as buildings and houses were leveled by the onslaught of chaos. The sound waves struck the couple's house, decimating it. Miraculously, or rather unfortunately, they survived. Hilda, in typical fashion, wanted to tidy up, only to be held back and told that she couldn't leave until the fallout subsided. In a new edition, Jim assured his wife that they would be fine. Another voice spoke out one that Hilda could not hear. Jim reacted in disgust, becoming further unsettled.
Old boy, why are you sentencing your wife to death?
The conclusion I drew was that it represented Jim's innermost thoughts, or more directly, his conscience. It was a monotonous voice bereft of any emotion, nothing there but a cold, pure logic. The two attempted to survive as long as they could, off of what little rations they had left, or whatever survived the blast. Their water bottles were disintegrated, and subsequently their water lines were cut off. The couple were immeasurably famished. Throughout the week, they made offhanded remarks about how people lost in the wilderness resorted to drawing lots and sacrificing the weakest member so the others would live. The thought they were so hungry they'd be willing to eat each other was horrible. Jim once found a meat cleaver and walked over to his wife as she laid on the couch sleeping. He contemplated his options but got cold feet when Hilda was staring awake. He quickly hid the weapon away, instead telling her that she was hearing things because of her age. One day, while they were walking in their yard, Jim smelled something in the air. Hilda followed him, also smelling it. Roasted pork, she thought. Her stomach was so barren, she'd waste no time gorging on the pork. They'd walk over a hill, their thoughts immediately turning to sorrow. A family of 4 was huddled together tightly and were roasted dark by the blast. They were the remains of a husband and wife, and their 2 small kids. Hilda and Jim looked at each other, then at me, with that 1,000-yard stare. The camera focused in on Jim's beady eyes. Fire danced in them. He knelt down and ripped off an arm from one of the kids. Hilda prayed over the bodies before digging in as well.
The powers that be will get to us in the end.
A few weeks passed by. The couple were somehow still alive. The camera panned to the fridge, showing scraps of flesh that were left of the family. Around that time, Jim had also connected the rainwater, unaware that it was radiated and unsafe regardless of boiling it. Their water supply had vanished again. Rat carcasses were thrown all over the floor. It then segued to Hilda vomiting into the toilet, ranting about hating the taste of rat meat and blood. Boils were all over her body and Jim's. They were skeletal in appearance, with their leathery skin barely being held together.
I just hope that Ron and Beryl made it out okay.
Hilda weakly said. As she said this, a jump cut of Ron popped up. He was animated with clay alongside his wife and children, They were melded together in a fleshy blob, with their limbs conjoined together. Jim assures her that their son's family would always stick together. Hilda's hair began to fall out by the time she suggested to Jim that they should return to their bags because another attack could come. Jim agreed to her suggestion, still assuring her that help would arrive. The voice from earlier returned, now violently criticizing Jim on withholding the truth about their situation. Hilda got into her bag and waited for her husband to join her. It felt like hours before he returned, and when he did, I was taken aback. In his hands was a rifle. He cocked it and pointed it behind his wife's head.
Dear, are you there?
She asked. Jim choked back tears as he tried to speak coherently.
Recite the Lord's Prayer for me, will you?
She obliged. Hilda recited the prayer louder, as if hoping that her prayers would be heard. A single tear rolled down Jim's face. A loud gunshot is heard when the camera panned to the outside of the house. Jim looked at the gun in horror and tossed it beside his feet. Kneeling down, he clutched his wife as she lay dying. Tears dropped on her bosom. He remained in that position until the film faded out. The voice reappeared after the Morse code spelled out mad.
Old Jim died, clutching his beloved wife to his dying breath, due to radiation poisoning. But what he ultimately learned was that when you die, nothing happens.
I was speechless with what I had witnessed. The film was dark, but never would I have thought that Briggs had a more sinister ending in store for the elderly couple. I took a flask and hard-copied the download so I could watch it every now and then. Good too, because the user's account was terminated, with the only indication of its existence being the other responses that the users gave. Briggs said it himself, that he wanted to show the utter hopelessness of surviving a nuclear war. And he succeeded. Okay. That was When the Wind Blows alternate ending, written by AustinDR. I Holy shit. Review time. So, I'm just going to give the rating right away. And give the reasoning. I'm going to give this story a 9.5 out of 10. And I'm going to get a little bit of kerfuffle possibly in the comments for this, but the reason why I'm giving it a 9.5 is because I did spot a few spelling errors. Like wife is life and stuff like that. And I'm saying this because this is certainly a very competently written story. However, when you're writing something competently, you have to focus on the grammar aspect as well. You have to spell check, no matter what. So I'm going to have to dock half a point for that. But the rest of the story? Wow, that was something special. The original movie was sad enough, and this took it to a whole new level. So, if anyone isn't aware of what When the Wind Blows, it's basically a story that delves into the horrors of nuclear war and what it can turn someone into. You know, and again, the original ending was depressing enough, but this is Let's start off with the fact that Jim and his wife are so gaunt and disheveled by the explosion. They're starving so much, their food completely fried up, that they're willing to eat someone over it. Not just someone, a family. A family that is clearly irradiated and melted to the bone from the destruction. And the worst part is, it's understandable why they do that. There's no food anywhere, and the smell, the smell of pork got to them. They were driven over the edge from this horrific, terrorizing, just radiation filling the air. And eventually, poor Jim just, he can't take it anymore and realizes that his wife, he doesn't want his wife to go through the, well, how do I say this? The same thing that he may go through eventually. So he brings a shotgun into the house and kills her out of mercy. Like, just, sorry, out of mercy. All of this because he doesn't want her to give in to the radiation and die an even worse, slower, more painful death. Which I think is really uh, metaphorical, symbolic. Especially the ending where he dies of the radiation poisoning passed on to him. And it says, when you die, nothing happens. Implying that he sees nothing in his afterlife. Nothing at all. Black, maybe white. How would you know? What would you... As a Christian myself, yes, I will say this. I grew up a Christian. I grew up in a Christian household. I worship God. Yep. And this story made me think. How do you truly know what you will see in your afterlife? Will it be all white? Will it be all black? You wouldn't know because you wouldn't exist to see that. And you wouldn't know now because obviously you wouldn't want to die to see that. Because once you pop it in your head, you can't go back. Wow, man. This is... Austin, I'm going to give this story a 9.5. This was glorious. It was amazing. It was very well written. You should be proud. And I genuinely hope that this gets featured on the wiki it was posted on. Like, admins of the Lost Episode wiki, if you're hearing this, please feature this. Please feature this pasta. It is actually brilliant. I can't express this enough. It is so freaking good. Like, things are implied rather than straight up told, which I appreciate. It makes the story a whole lot more uncomfortable and disturbing and depressing all at the same time to read. Yeah, Austin, you deserve this rating. I really hope you keep writing because, good God, man. Like, please continue writing. I love to see your other works in the future. But as always, this is simply my personal opinion. We all have our opinions regarding these stories. What did you think of the story? What would you have done to improve upon it? And as always, I will see you all in the next narration. I love you all. Bless.